Good morning. Did you know that Ukraine is halfway around the world from California? So if you're here in California, we're all the way around the world here. And there's actually a 10-hour difference between us. So when it is 10 o'clock in the morning for me, it's midnight for you. When it's 10 o'clock in the morning for you, it's 8 p.m. on the same day for me. So we have a whole different time zone, actually several time zones away, and so our time is a bit different. Today, it's in the morning for me, but it's in the middle of the night for you. I thought I would tell you a little bit of Ukrainian history while I'm out here having my hot tea this morning. Ukraine has a long history of suffering. There are a lot of different empires that came and conquered Ukraine, made them into slaves. It kind of reminds me of the Israelites, how the different countries like Babylonia came in and conquered them and took them away back to their own countries, and then they worked their way back to Israel. The same thing kind of has happened with Ukraine, and in just the last 100 years they've suffered a lot. And one of the biggest things that happened to them was in 1932 to 1934, and they were under the Russian Empire, and the Russians made all the Ukrainians grow wheat for bread, and they took away all the farming tools of the Ukrainians, so they couldn't work in their own gardens, but they had to work in the big gardens, or the communes as they called them. And they would force them to work all day long for like 10 hours, harvesting the wheat and pulling the weeds and those kind of things. But they weren't allowed to take any of that wheat home. If they were caught with just a little piece of wheat in their pocket or maybe hidden in their shoe, they would go to prison for 10 years. And one of the things that the Russian Empire did is basically starved Ukraine. And over 10 million Ukrainians died from hunger because they had no food in this 2-year period. So food is very, very important here in Ukraine, especially bread. You know, you don't take a piece of bread and throw it on the ground here. I mean, they eat every piece or they feed it to their animals. You do not waste bread. And it's because of their history. And so they're very sensitive about food, and food is very important to them. And even though things got better, and like they went through World War II, which was very difficult for Ukrainians. They had the German army coming through killing people, and then they had the Soviet Union coming through and killing people. And they lost about 11 million people, and that was in the 1950s. So Ukraine's had a very long and hard history, and so now, with Russia invading them, it's also been very difficult here. Sometimes we have the drones that fly overhead. We're talking big drones, bigger than a vehicle, you know, and they hit different targets. And sometimes we hear, like last night I heard jet fighter planes flying over. Thankfully, we're in a fairly safe area. But there are a lot of Ukrainians who are suffering right now. Some of the people who come to our soup kitchen, they ran away from their homes with just the clothes that they had on because of the invading Russians, and that they were bombing and killing people. And so some of the people that we serve dinner to, and they take it home and they can eat all week on it, they have almost nothing. And so they're building their lives again. So suffering here is a part of life, but the big difference right now is that Ukrainians understand what freedom is. You know, when the Soviet Union broke apart in the early 1990s, 1990-91, they didn't really understand what freedom was. But through the years, they've started to learn what freedom is. They want freedom, and they don't want to have a dictator over them. And so that's what they're fighting for. They're fighting to protect their families. They're fighting to make sure that their culture is not destroyed. And so Ukrainians continue to suffer today, but I am amazed at how they do it. They encourage me. I see how strong they are, and it just encourages me. It encourages Mark. But we thought we'd just share a little bit of that history with you for you to understand why we're feeding and why feeding people is so important here. It's because of their history, because they haven't had a lot of food. When some of the invading armies came through, they would take all the good food, and the Ukrainians were left with the ears and the tail and the fat of the pigs. And so that's what they learned to eat, and they learned to survive on those things. And still today, You know, I see them chewing on a pig ear or a pigtail, you know, after it's been butchered. And it's part of their culture here, but they've learned to survive on almost nothing. So that's really important, the food here. And that's why we understand that that's a door that opens their hearts to hearing us when we talk about Jesus Christ. So sometimes we need to think about what's important to the other person and then work through that, because God has given us that opportunity. And then we get to share about Jesus Christ and the light of the world that he is to us, and how he saved us and he gives us love and peace.